It's official. The Pentagon just dumped ULA after 20 years. SpaceX won 7 missions worth $845 million. ULA, just 2 missions for $427 million. But here's what's crazy. ULA is literally tearing down their launch towers right now. SpaceX is moving in to build Starship pads on the same spot. Boeing lost $10.7 billion and wants to sell ULA immediately. Meanwhile, SpaceX completed 134 launches last year alone. What killed America's most trusted rocket company? And why is the military betting everything on Elon's team? Let's dive right in. The Empire falls at Cape Canaveral. The demolition crews arrived at dawn on June 6, 2025. Their target? The 330-foot mobile service tower that had stood guard over America's most classified launches for 23 years. Every GPS satellite guiding our missiles, every spy satellite watching our enemies, every nuclear command relay keeping us safe, all launched from this tower. But now, the sledgehammers are swinging, steel is crashing, and ULA, the company that built this empire, just walked away from their lease. They couldn't afford to stay. 20 feet away, SpaceX engineers are already measuring concrete pads, already planning something that would have been unthinkable just 5 years ago. 2 Starship launch complexes, 76 missions per year, more firepower than ULA managed in their entire final decade. The question burning through the Pentagon right now: how did America's most trusted space company become obsolete? The numbers don't lie. When those Phase 3, Lane 2 contracts hit the Pentagon's conference table, the room went silent. SpaceX, 7 missions, $845 million. ULA, 2 missions, $427 million. But wait, here's what really happened in those closed-door meetings. General after general looked at the same brutal math. ULA's Delta IV Heavy, $350 million per launch. Payload capacity, 28.8 tons. SpaceX's Falcon Heavy, $150 million. Payload, 63.8 tons. Half the price, double the muscle. For 20 years, the Pentagon had been paying Ferrari prices for Honda performance. But the real shock? This wasn't even about money. Something far more dangerous was lurking beneath those spreadsheets. The Russian engine secret. Every Atlas V rocket, ULA's workhorse for 2 decades, carried a deadly secret into orbit. Russian engines, the RD-180. Built in Moscow, tested in Russia, shipped to America with Vladimir Putin's approval. Our most classified satellites, launched on Russian power. Then 2014 exploded everything. Ukraine, sanctions. Suddenly, Congress woke up to a terrifying reality. We were trusting our national security to Putin's rocket engines. The deadline hit like a sledgehammer. No more Russian engines after 2022. ULA had 8 years to build a replacement. 8 years to save their empire. They called it Vulcan Centaur, the rocket that was supposed to change everything. Vulcan looked perfect on paper. American-made BE-4 engines from Blue Origin, methane fuel instead of Russian kerosene, modern avionics, $110 million per launch, finally competitive with SpaceX. January 8, 2024, first flight. Success. The rocket soared. ULA celebrated. Military planners started booking missions. After years of delays, Vulcan was finally ready to reclaim America's launch dominance. But then, October 4th happened. Certification flight number 2. 90 seconds after liftoff, disaster struck. One solid rocket booster failed. The nozzle cracked. Superheated gases escaped. The booster hung on for 30 agonizing seconds before finally separating. The rocket still made orbit, but the damage was done. The Space Force grounded all future Vulcan missions. The investigation began, and ULA's military customers started making phone calls to SpaceX. But here's the twist that nobody saw coming: the engine betrayal. Those BE-4 engines that were supposed to save ULA, Blue Origin couldn't deliver them. For 3 brutal years, ULA CEO Tory Bruno waited. Promised delivery dates came and went. Test engines exploded, turbo pumps failed, production lines shut down. Meanwhile, SpaceX was launching twice a week with their bulletproof Merlin engines. But here's where it gets really ugly. Blue Origin needed those same BE-4 engines for their own New Glenn rocket. 7 engines per rocket, hundreds of millions in revenue at stake. When push came to shove, Jeff Bezos chose himself. Blue Origin stopped delivering engines to ULA. They needed every single one for New Glenn's debut. ULA, their own customer, got thrown under the bus. The result? Over 24 military missions delayed. The Space Force furious. Major General Stephen Perry calling Vulcan's performance unsatisfactory in front of Congress. ULA's monopoly was crumbling, and their own supplier had lit the fuse. SpaceX's reusability revolution. While ULA struggled with engine deliveries, Elon Musk was rewriting the rules of spaceflight. 134 successful launches in 2022. That's one mission every 2.7 days. How is that even possible? The answer changes everything. They land their rockets and fly them again. Think about it this way. ULA builds a rocket, launches it once, then watches it burn up in the atmosphere. $350 million, gone. SpaceX builds a rocket, lands it, refurbishes it, and flies it 15 more times. Same rocket, 15 missions. It's like ULA is buying a new car for every trip to the grocery store. SpaceX just fills up the gas tank. This isn't just about saving money. It's about creating unlimited capacity. While ULA takes 2 years to build one Delta IV, SpaceX can launch the same Falcon 9 booster 15 times in 6 months. But there's something even bigger happening at Cape Canaveral. Boeing's meltdown. ULA's problems run deeper than failed rockets and delayed engines. Their parent company, Boeing, is hemorrhaging money. $10.7 billion lost in 2024. Commercial airplane disasters, defense contract failures, stock price in freefall. Boeing is desperate to stop the bleeding, and ULA is on the chopping block. Blue Origin and Sierra Space are already circling, ready to pick up the pieces. But would new ownership even matter? The brutal truth. ULA's entire business model belongs in a museum. They design rockets like it's 1960, expensive components, slow assembly, limited production. SpaceX designs rockets like it's 2030, mass production, rapid reusability, unlimited scalability. Boeing isn't just selling ULA, they're admitting defeat in the space race. The military's impossible choice. Here's the Pentagon's dilemma in one stark fact. ULA has never failed a military mission. 145 launches, perfect record, 0 compromises with America's most classified payloads. SpaceX is faster, cheaper, more capable, but they're still proving themselves with our deepest secrets. So why did the military make this dramatic switch? The answer reveals something shocking about how modern warfare is evolving. Space, the ultimate battlefield. Today's wars aren't won with tanks and fighter jets. They're won with satellites and data streams. GPS guides every smart bomb. Communication satellites coordinate every operation. Spy satellites track every enemy movement. Weather satellites predict every storm. But here's the terrifying reality keeping Pentagon planners awake. America launches maybe 10 military satellites per year. China, they're launching hundreds. If a shooting war breaks out in space, we're outnumbered 10 to 1. The Pentagon finally realized, we don't need perfect rockets. We need fast rockets, lots of them. ULA's old model, 2 years to build, test, and launch one satellite can't handle that pace. SpaceX's reusable fleet can put replacement satellites in orbit within days, not years. This isn't just about cost savings anymore. It's about survival in an era where space dominance determines who wins every conflict on Earth. The end of an era. Right now, as those towers crash down at Cape Canaveral, we're watching the death of old space. For 60 years, aerospace meant Boeing and Lockheed. Massive government contracts, slow development cycles, guaranteed profits, no real competition. SpaceX didn't just challenge that world, they obliterated it. They proved rockets could be cheap, reusable, and mass-produced like cars. The Pentagon's decision isn't just about switching contractors. It's about choosing which version of America's future they want to bet on. The slow, expensive, limited approach that kept us safe for decades, or the fast, cheap, unlimited approach that could keep us ahead of China for the next century. But this raises one final question that will determine everything about America's place in space. The future written in steel and fire. So here we are watching America's space giants fall. While a company that didn't exist 20 years ago rewrites the rules of power. ULA built their empire on guaranteed contracts and government comfort. SpaceX built theirs on innovation and impossible deadlines. The Pentagon's choice wasn't really about rockets. It was about which America they believe in. The safe, slow one that got us this far, or the bold, relentless one that might get us to Mars. But here's what nobody's talking about. While we're celebrating SpaceX's victory, China just announced their own reusable rocket program. Russia's building lunar bases. India's launching missions for $10 million. The space race isn't over, it's just getting started. So I've got to ask you, when the next crisis hits, when satellites start falling from the sky, when space becomes the ultimate battlefield, will SpaceX's revolution be enough to keep America ahead? What do you think? Drop your take in the comments. And if you want to dive deeper into how China is planning to challenge SpaceX's dominance, that story's coming next week. Hit subscribe, the space race is about to get a whole lot more interesting. Starship 36 exploded on the test stand. 3 seconds, gone. But why did the methane tank rupture without warning? The answer changes everything we thought we knew about Starship's design. This wasn't pilot error or bad weather. This was a structural failure that happened during the safest part of testing, on the ground with minimal fuel. If it can't handle a simple static fire, how can it survive space? The explosion destroyed months of work and pushed Flight 10 back indefinitely. But the real question isn't when the next launch will be. It's whether SpaceX needs to abandon the entire V2 design. Let's dive right in. The night everything changed. Picture this, 11:30 p.m. at Starbase, Texas. The massive floodlights illuminate Starship 36 like a steel cathedral against the dark sky. Engineers monitor their screens as liquid methane flows through the umbilical lines. Everything is routine until it isn't. The prop load is 95% complete. Just 10 more minutes to the static fire test. Then, without warning, without any sign of distress, the impossible happens. At exactly 11:47 p.m., Ship 36's methane tank doesn't just fail, it explodes from the inside out. The steel walls, designed to withstand the vacuum of space, rupture like tissue paper. In 3 seconds, $200 million of cutting-edge technology becomes a fireball that lights up the Texas night. But this isn't just another test failure. This is the moment that changes everything we thought we knew about Starship. What the camera caught. Frame-by-frame analysis reveals something terrifying. Look closely at the footage and you'll see it. The ship's side bulges outward just before the explosion, not inward, like you'd expect from external pressure. Outward, from within. This tells us the tank was fighting a battle it couldn't win. Internal pressure building to catastrophic levels. The methane, despite being at minimal levels, was creating forces the structure simply couldn't contain. Think about a balloon being inflated past its limit. But instead of rubber stretching gradually, this was steel. Brittle, unforgiving steel that held, then failed catastrophically in milliseconds. The energy release was astronomical. Debris launched thousands of feet into the air. The shockwave traveled for miles. People standing on nearby roads felt the heat on their faces from over a mile away. The pattern nobody wants to talk about. Here's where this story gets darker. Ship 36 wasn't the first V2 Starship to die violently. Ship 33, destroyed in flight. Ship 34, same fate. Ship 35, lost during testing. Every single V2 Starship has failed. Not one has completed its mission successfully. Not one has survived to be recovered and studied. This isn't bad luck anymore. This is a pattern. And patterns in engineering mean only one thing: systematic design flaws that nobody wants to acknowledge. The V2 design introduced the common dome structure, one bulkhead separating the methane and oxygen tanks. Revolutionary in theory, potentially deadly in practice. What if the very innovation SpaceX thought would make Starship better is actually making it more dangerous? The 3-second apocalypse. The explosion sequence tells a story of cascading failure. First, the methane tank ruptures. We can see the initial blast point in the upper section. Then, milliseconds later, the oxygen tank joins the party. Liquid oxygen is what rocket engineers call an oxidizer. It makes everything burn faster, hotter, more violently. When those two tanks mix their